Maybe you can help me, but I've never heard of a group that was accused of being a cult respond to that accusation without sounding like a cult. Which is not to say that they were a cult, it's just that once they respond to it, they sure tend to sound like one. I think it's because most of these responses aren't even intended to convince outsiders that these groups aren't cults. It's just to convince the insiders that the question itself is persecution. They're thought-stopping reprogramming techniques. Now, my old church has been getting the "are they a cult" treatment again recently, and I've restrained from responding to the responses from the church until this latest one that's making the rounds, and it was shared by people that are very close to me, so this is one of those keep it to yourself aunties kind of situations. But I want to point out an odd dissonance in this rhetoric. So first, let's remember, cults have a negative connotation, not a negative definition. I get not wanting to be associated with UFOs and poison punch or those eyes wide shut parties, but here's what Merriam-Webster's defines it as. Not the end all, but a good start. A cult is a religion regarded as unorthodox, meaning it deviates from commonly accepted beliefs and practices. Now, this is an Adventist responding to videos suggesting that Adventism is a cult, arguing that Adventism is not a cult.
Is that every single one of these videos that's been popping up lately, questioning if the Adventist church is a cult, has to do with something or many things that is taught in these 3 chapters.
The chapters he's referring to there are Revelations 12 through 14.
Let me show you the list. Sabbath, the sanctuary, which includes the investigative judgment, the second coming, the spirit of prophecy, the state of the dead, the 3 angels' messages, which includes the mark of the beast and righteousness by faith, the great controversy. What you see there are many of the pillars of the Adventist faith.
What did he call those?
Pillars of the Adventist faith.
Now, if you were to list off 9 pillars of your doctrine from 3 chapters in Revelations that Christianity in general disagrees with, wouldn't you expect them to have some questions? Would it take inspired discernment to see that coming?
This list is very important. And why do I say that? This statement from, dare I say, the spirit of prophecy will answer that question. Our people have been regarded as too insignificant to be worthy of notice, but a change will come. The Christian world is now making movements which will necessarily bring commandment-keeping people into prominence. Every position of our faith will be searched into. This is why we're being questioned so much.
Oh, that reminds me. Him suggesting that the reason that these doctrines are being questioned is because the spirit of prophecy predicted they would be goes to the second definition of a cult. To have a great devotion to a person, an idea, an object, a movement, or work. Because 2024 is not the birth of some new unfounded internet-led spiritual attack on Adventism.
That's been popping up lately.
These questions have always been questions.
This is why since the 1950s, around the time that the book Questions on Doctrines was released, that other Christian denominations were asking Adventists the same question over and over again. Why do you differ? Why do you differ? Why do you differ on these doctrines?
Exactly. He just gave a list of doctrinal beliefs, pillars, to use his words, that the Seventh-day Adventist Church hold that deviate from the commonly accepted beliefs and practices of Christianity. So clearly he's going to explain now how these pillars aren't actually unorthodox, right? I mean, everybody knows about the Sabbath stuff, not so much how it's tied into Revelations 12 through 14, but whatever. Second coming, mark of the beast, lots of variations on that stuff are out there. No big deal. Now, personally, I would have paid good money for his explanation of righteousness by faith in light of the rest of this list, but that's an entirely different video. It's the rest of this list that truly deviates. Like, the investigative judgment is a unique theory that no other Bible scholars find in the Bible. It not only alters the mainstream Christian doctrine of atonement, not only declares that no one's sins have yet been covered, it is also just an old, repeatedly debunked prophecy of the second coming, reconverted into a completely unverifiable claim after the verifiable ones kept not verifying themselves. So believing a doctrine that important when no other group of people who hold the Bible as a relevant text even agree it's in there would be a great spot to clear up any cult accusations, right? And then there's the pesky spirit of prophecy thing, and how that has to specifically mean the writings of Ellen White, and how that necessarily means that only people who believe in her gift or the message that she left behind are eligible to be in God's remnant, and how even though God sent her 2,000 visions and inspired her to write nearly 100,000 pages of instruction and correction for the church over 70 years of her life, God did not send that information to the world or to the Christian church, but just the Adventist church, which didn't exist before she started getting the messages anyway. And while her writings are not an addition to Scripture, her great controversy book and theme, which is something the church is currently trying to give away 1 billion copies of with a B. And while it is argued that it is not an addition to Scripture, it does in fact start in 70 AD with the destruction of Jerusalem, telling the story of God's true people from there until the Seventh-day Adventist Church pops up, and then projects forward to 1,000 years after the end of the world. So, considering they believe the Bible as a literal historic story of the people of God from creation to 70 AD, and then the great controversy is 70 AD and forward, but it's not an addition. Anyway, instead of answering the question, why do you differ
on these doctrines,
he reframes the question itself as a demonic attack on truth by setting up a paradox.
There's a reason why so many channels are popping up that are completely dedicated to tearing apart every point of doctrine Adventists differ on from mainstream Protestantism. And there can only be 2 options for the reason that this is happening. And these are the 2 options. Number 1 is a very short one, which is that every single Seventh-day Adventist that understands this message is either crazy or truly deceived.
His first option is the argumentum ad populum fallacy, where he appeals to the group's sense of community, basically saying, can't all be wrong. I mean, think of how many of us there are. Of course, on the other hand of that, they do believe the rest of the entire human population of 8 billion people are deceived. So we can't be wrong, but the rest of you definitely can. But it's his option number 2 that is the most telling.
Option number 2 is that the attention and sometimes vitriol that is directed at the SDA Church is a direct expression of what is highlighted in Revelation chapter 12, which is that there really is a great controversy between Christ and Satan. Perhaps Satan really has come down to earth with great anger because Satan knows that he has a short time, and so he's accusing the brethren before God.
He has turned being asked to explain your beliefs into a self-fulfilling prophecy, another way to point to the church's unique interpretations and beliefs and claim that they're being verified in real time.
Perhaps this wrath is being directed at the woman representing the church that keeps the commandments of God and has the testimony of Jesus, which Revelation 19:10 defines as the spirit of prophecy. So perhaps Ellen White really is a prophet, and that's why so many people are obsessed with proving otherwise, the same way that they tried to discredit the prophets of old.
Keep in mind, his premise was that people are asking if Adventism is a cult. His conclusion was either the denomination is fully deceived or Ellen White is a real prophet, and questioning her or causing any doubt in that is the dragon of Revelation, the devil himself, attacking God's one true final church, clearly defined as just the Adventists. To an outsider, all that does is sound more like a cult, and then the insiders don't see it. Which, now that I think about it, sounds an awful lot